Brene Brown points out that facts speak to a cognitive part of us that is really a small part of who we are. When storytelling taps into our true language of emotion. Now, Brene Brown also points out that we make the mistake of thinking that we are cognitive beings who on occasion feel, when neurobiologically, we are feeling beings who on occasion think. Now, whether you're a course creator, coach, marketer, thought leader, activist, nonprofit leader, one of the biggest mistakes I see us making in our marketing and our ads and our messaging is we try to speak to people from a rational, cognitive thinking place. We talk about our features, our facts, our stories, why we've been here, what we've done, all of these things, but in a very rational way. When what we should be doing is using the power of storytelling to create and build the bridge of relationships. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 ways you can tap into both the art and the science of storytelling. For example, do you know why when you are binge watching on Netflix and there's a cliffhanger at the end of an episode that even if it's midnight, 1 a.m, when you should be getting more tired, each cliffhanger gives you this burst of energy to find out what's going to happen next. There is a chemical reaction that goes off in your body that is actually creating that burst of energy. And I want to show you how you can use those same storytelling tools that all of the big names are using, Hulu, Netflix, all of those. We're going to show you how to tap into those so you can use them to make that impact with your business through your storytelling. So let's jump into the training. Here we go. So let us start off with a story. So in 2006, New York Times Magazine journalist Rob Walker set out on a mission. What he did was he went out to thrift stores and bought 200 unimportant, uninspiring, super ordinary items. And he made sure that they were cheap. See, the average cost was around $1.25. And he took care to ensure that the items he purchased were ordinary and that there was nothing particularly exciting about them. So I'm going to share with you 5 examples of some of the items that he bought. So the first was this. This is exactly one of the items that he bought. So if you can't see it, if you're listening on the podcast, I'll explain it. So it's a horse little statue. Okay. The next one is a jar of marbles, very ordinary jar of marbles. The next one is a paperweight globe. Okay. And the next one is a Russian doll. And the last is an ordinary plastic pink horse. Okay. And for those of you listening on the podcast, these are very small items, not very big. If you imagine you're just going to a thrift store, just getting ordinary items. So he went out and bought 200 of these ordinary items that really have no significance or meaning. You would overlook them. And for these 200 items, he paid a total of $129. Now, what he did then was he contacted 200 professional authors and writers and asked if they would write a story about each of the objects. They said yes. So now what we have is 200 objects and purchased from this thrift store. And now each of those objects has a detailed backstory to go with them. So then what happened is these items were then relisted on eBay, and then the description of the items was their backstory. And so the experiment was to see what impact would the story have on the reselling of these items. So the horse head, very ordinary horse head. Okay. Once the backstory was added, it was originally purchased for 99 cents. So that's what was purchased for. Okay. The backstory was then added, relisted on eBay, and it was sold for $62.95. With the addition of the backstory, was able to sell this thing for quite expensive if you think about how ordinary this object is. So you're thinking, that's pretty awesome. Sounds like a fluke. Jar of marbles in a mason jar. Very boring jar of marbles. Originally bought for $1. With the backstory, it was sold for $50. The paperweight, originally purchased for $1.49, sold for $197.50. The Russian doll, originally purchased for $3, sold for how do you say this word? $193.50. The pony, the plastic, pink, cheap looking horse, bought for 99 cents. It looks like it should be bought for 99 cents. With the backstory, sold for $104.50. Y'all, from the power of storytelling, these items were originally purchased for $129. The only thing that was added to them was a story, and they ended up selling for altogether $8,000. Purchased for $129, altogether sold for $8,000. Why? The items themselves weren't changed. They weren't polished or made to look nicer. So what happened? What was changed was the perceived value. And the perceived value was increased through storytelling. See, there isn't this fixed universal determinant of what something is worth or what people are willing to pay for it. People don't have this magical system to decide this is what something should be priced at. See, people buy based upon their perception and their perspective. And perceived value is not based upon logic, thinking, or reason. It is made through feelings and the emotional investment someone has. And we can increase that emotional investment when we deepen the relationship that someone has with our product. And the best way to do that is through storytelling. See, why I love this story is that it demonstrates so powerfully that no matter what business you're in, e-commerce, MLM, coaching, photography, no matter what you sell, if it worked with a jar of marbles, it will work with you. And so I hope you will start to make storytelling and building relationships with your customers, with your coworkers, with your audience, your number one marketing priority. And I hope that you will do that using the power of storytelling. What better way to demonstrate the power of storytelling than to share with you a story? So this is a picture here of my wife and I. Now, my wife and I had 4 weddings in 1 year. In other words, in 1 year, we got married 4 different times. So for those of you listening on the podcast, right now I'm sharing a photo from our first wedding. This one took place in Enugu, Nigeria. We had almost 2,000 people there. Such a blast. But this story I'm about to tell you isn't actually about our wedding. It is about our origin story and how we ended up becoming married, having this wonderful life that we're having now. So blessed. Oh, side story. That's a side story to the story. So I want to share with you our date number 3. Okay. It was an epic date. So it started off at this really awesome Indian restaurant, and it was only going to get better from there, because little did we know that that very night we were going to get to meet a celebrity, and not just any celebrity, but one that left me so excited. I couldn't even speak when they started talking to me. I mean, y'all, you're about to hear that story. Okay, here we go. So after we went out to eat, we then went to a concert after the restaurant, and the show itself was a blast. Okay, if the night ended there, I would have been super happy, but it was about to get even more intense. So what ended up happening is after the concert was done, Adora and I were vibing, so I wasn't about to rush things. I mean, this is date number 3. Things are going well. I'm not going to rush us out of here. So we ended up hanging out in the music venue for a long time afterwards. We went into the top part of the venue, into the balcony, found some comfortable seats, and we're just hanging out, just talking, getting to know each other. You know, by this point, they had swept the place, the lights were on, and you saw everyone pretty much had left. It was just us and some people cleaning up. So we thought, you know, we're in this quiet place, this part of the venue that no one's really going to be up here until it's time for them to kick us out. But then all of a sudden, so Adora was on my left. All of a sudden I hear on my right somebody's voice, and I am just like instantly like, oh my God. I look to my right and my heart jumps into my throat, and I say to Adora, oh my God, look who it is. Oh my gosh. So I'm freaking out. Adora, you know, she's a film director. She's used to being around celebrities. This is no big deal to her. So she's like, let's go meet them. Grabs my hand. We get up. go over, start talking to them. So here's what happens. So they say, Adora says, hey, this is, Tom, and hi, nice to meet you. So they reach out their hand when Adora introduces me, and our hands touch because they're shaking my hands. It's what humans do, right? As soon as my hand touches their hand and they say, nice to meet you, Tom, y'all, I instantly become starstruck. I now know what this word means, starstruck, right? I literally lost the ability to start talking. They asked me simple questions like, hey, how did you enjoy the show? How are you doing? And whenever they'd ask me a question, the answer I gave to every single question was, I literally could not speak. I was so in shock that this person in front of me had just touched my hand and was talking to me. So Adora had to translate for me. She's like, yeah, he's doing well. No, he loved the show. This is awesome. So starstruck. I didn't get to take a photo. So you're going to have to believe me that this moment actually happened, but still it was one of the most memorable moments of my life because I got to meet, I want y'all to guess, which celebrity do you think I got to meet? If you're listening to the podcast, say it out loud. If you're listening on Facebook or on YouTube, go ahead, put in the comments, which celebrity did I get to meet? That was so exciting. Had my tongue all twisted, could barely even speak. Go ahead, guess. You get 3 seconds. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. The celebrity I got to meet was... Y'all are going to have to stay tuned for the next episode to find out who I got to meet, because I'm not telling you here today. And so I'm guessing right now, I could be wrong, I'm guessing that right now you're probably feeling a little upset with me. Tom, what the heck? You build up this whole story. You don't even tell us. This is a bunch of malarkey. Who the heck is this celebrity? Why did you do this to me? Don't worry, y'all. There is a method to my madness. And what I would like for you to do is I want you to become self-aware of what is happening inside your mind right now. Because I have just created an experience for you on purpose. And I did it very intentionally. And I was able to create this experience for you because I know the science of storytelling. And I want us to jump into that a little bit right here. See, I have just created on purpose a chemical reaction in your brain. And that chemical reaction created a desired effect, a desired experience that I intentionally wanted you to go through. Now, this is something that Netflix, Hulu, the Avengers, the Marvel Universe, anything that has multiple episodes, that has multiple movies, this is something that these businesses, that these streaming services, that these storytellers, they are very aware of this science that I just used with you here today. I want us to talk about it. So what just happened is what we commonly call a cliffhanger. So a cliffhanger is a great example that really demonstrates for us the science of storytelling. Now, this cliffhanger is actually a device of storytelling. And what happens is that when you experience a cliffhanger in a story, there is a chemical that goes off in your brain called corticotropin. Okay, I don't know how to say that word all together. Let's try it though. Corticotropin. Some of my psychiatrist friends out there, people who, neurologists that are listening, y'all have to tell me if I'm pronouncing this right. But we're going to call it moving forward CRH. Okay. Here's what happens with CRH and cliffhangers. See, cliffhangers trigger within us the excess production of CRH. And CRH causes the body to become alert. So cliffhangers create such a strong feeling of wanting to know what is going to happen next that the body literally makes itself feel stressed. And a lot of that is because of our body starting to produce this excess of CRH. Now, this is also why when you binge watch shows late at night, when normally you should be getting tired, right? It's midnight, it's 1, it's 2. The reason you don't get tired is because this chemical reaction actually causes the body to become alert, right? So if you're in nature and CRH goes off in your brain, it's making you become alert for a reason. Your body is saying, become stressed, become alert for a reason. Now, in this instance, the reason is a cliffhanger. So you get this rush of CRH and makes you feel alert. And so your body says, Let's find out what's going to happen next. And so instead of feeling sleepy, you get this burst of energy and motivation to watch the next episode. Now, that's what happens with a cliffhanger. Let's talk about what happens when the cliffhanger is actually resolved. So when you push through and watch the next episode, or if I was to tell you that the celebrity that I met is, see, that's the CRH, that's the cliffhanger right there. But here's what happens. When a cliffhanger is resolved in a story, there are a few chemicals that go off in your brain that we're going to highlight two of them. One is serotonin. You might have heard of this one before. When we resolve a cliffhanger, when you watch the next episode, we get an immediate feeling of satisfaction. And that's not just imaginary. See, when we resolve the cliffhanger, our body produces an increase of serotonin. And serotonin is associated with feelings of satisfaction. The other one, you've probably heard of this one before as well, dopamine. See, after serotonin is released, also dopamine is released, and dopamine is associated with pleasure. So what happens through storytelling, I can make you first feel super alert, super focused, and then I can give you the resolve that you're looking for. And you immediately first get a feeling of satisfaction, and then you get a feeling of pleasure. So let's put the whole experience together. First, a cliffhanger happens and your body becomes alert and you want to know what's going to happen to the point where you actually become slightly stressed out. Then it is followed up with two chemicals that make you feel instant satisfaction and relief and pleasure. So when we start to study the brain, we see that a lot of our reactions, our impulses, and our behaviors are actually driven at a biological, neurological, and chemical level. That we aren't always as in control of our reactions as we might think. Or better said, if you understand these reactions that take place and the storytelling tools that can create them, we can in many ways become predictable. And I want to share with y'all as a marketer that the best marketers know this, for better or for worse, that this is at play in all of the best ads. I mean, think about it. Have you ever found yourself wanting to buy something you had no interest in prior to seeing that ad? And just being transparent, this happens for me anytime Apple releases one of their new phones, right? I have this phone that is really working great. I love it. There's nothing wrong with it. And then they say, we have this new release and I think my phone is garbage. Why do I even have this outdated thing? And it's because they are able to release these chemicals through storytelling within my body that physically connects me on an emotional level to the product. Now, these are just three of the chemical reactions that take place when we experience great stories. And there's so many others that are used in marketing, that are used in storytelling. But the more we become aware of this, the more you can start to recognize your behavior and its relationship with marketing. And for those of us who are marketers, we can start to see how when we intentionally understand these tools, we can use storytelling in a meaningful way. Now, I want to give you one more example here so that we can really just take this home. So we're going to talk about now the chemical called oxytocin. You've probably heard of this one as well. When our brains encounter a good story, oxytocin is released. And do you know what oxytocin is associated with? Give y'all a guess. Go ahead. Post it in the comments. If you're listening on the podcast, you can say it out loud. But if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, I love seeing what people are guessing. So go ahead, comment it down below. So oxytocin causes us, or is associated with, feelings of empathy and connection. And so I want you to think that, let's say you have a potential customer or you have somebody that you're presenting something to, and you want them to feel empathetic and connected to what you are selling or what you are sharing. Wouldn't that be helpful if you were to know a cheat code for how to release that into people's brains? And oxytocin is that. And so when we can understand how to storytell in a way where we can increase oxytocin in people's brains, that is a surefire way to start to do that. So let me share some peer-reviewed studies of this, right? So this doesn't just sound like pseudoscience. We got the fake news out there. So let me share with y'all some peer-reviewed studies that demonstrate that the amount of oxytocin released by the brain can predict how much people are willing to spend to help others. So here's one study that went down. This was a study done where they showed people 14 different ads showcasing a charity. And then they measured how oxytocin would impact the donations people would give based upon their reactions to those ads about the charity. So here's what they do. They gave one group of people watching these ads an increase of oxytocin in their brain. So, right, let's say you have 100 people. These aren't the exact numbers, but they had 100 people. They took 50 people and they would increase oxytocin in their brain by giving them a dose of oxytocin, okay? Then the other 50 people were giving a placebo, so nothing was happening. Okay, here's what went down. The people who watched the ads that were given the dose of oxytocin, so for the people who had increased oxytocin levels in their brain, there was a 57% increase in people donating. So in other words, people who had increased levels of oxytocin were 57% more likely to donate than people who had regular levels or did not have an increase of oxytocin in their brain. Not only that, but they found that the people who gave that had an increase of oxytocin in their brain gave 56% more than those who did not. So in other words, not only were people more likely to give, but when they gave 56% more than those who just had the placebo. And the only difference in their experience was the increase of oxytocin levels in their brain. Now, I know what you're thinking, or I'm guessing, or I'm hoping you're thinking something along the lines of, Tom, I'm not going to drug my customers with oxytocin. Tom, I'm not going to drug my audience with oxytocin. Is not going to happen. So this is fun, but what the heck am I supposed to do with this information? So here's what they found. This was a study in the Harvard Business Review entitled Why Your Brain Loves Good Storytelling. And what they found was, yes, all of these things are true. That when oxytocin levels are increased in someone, that they are more likely to give, that we are more likely to enjoy, that we are more likely to connect, to feel empathy. And the most effective way to increase oxytocin levels in someone is through stories that contain emotional content. In other words, when you tell a good story, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's in a meeting, whether it's through a video like this, when you use stories that contain emotional content, that have an element of vulnerability, it increases the oxytocin levels in people's brains. And so not only are they connecting with the power of the story, not only are they enjoying the story, but on a chemical level, it begins to increase the oxytocin levels in their brain, which on a biochemical level will automatically increase that feeling of empathy and connection. And so, my friends, as we go through this, I want you to begin to reflect upon how can you use the power of storytelling? How can you embrace it to drive empathy, connection, satisfaction, pleasure, and those to whom you are storytelling to? And this isn't just for when you're in front of somebody. Next time you're on the phone, whether it's a sales call or you're talking to somebody, I want you to reflect upon how you can use the power of storytelling to create those deep connections. This works for presentations as well, whether we're in person, whether we're not in person, whether it's for activism, entrepreneurship, whether you're in the medical field, social work. How can you use storytelling to build a deeper connection? And I'd love for you to down below share what are some ways that you are going to start to use storytelling to build empathy and connection. And so I hope by this point that you have bought in, that you have recognized that if we want to build a movement or build an audience or build a product or really just create connection, that storytelling is one of the most effective and powerful and meaningful ways to do that. Now, if you're wondering, that sounds great, Tom, but I don't have any stories, or how can I start doing this? What I want to recommend is, first of all, to just start to observe the many stories that are being told all around you, whether it's in the TV shows you're watching, the books you are reading, the things you're hearing from other people, the stories that I just shared with you today. But really what you're going to find is there are so many wonderful and meaningful stories happening in your life. It's just that you haven't been observing them. And so I recommend at the end of the day, once a week, couple times a week, to really just sit down and to reflect and to start to think and then journal on what was a interesting moment that happened. It doesn't have to be a very long story. You can really just write down 5 or 6 words. But if there was a story that happened, even if you don't know how you're going to use it, how you're going to tie it into something that you're selling or connecting or presenting, still just write them down. Because then when it comes time to doing a presentation or to creating an ad or anything like that, what you can then do is look through, find a good story, and then all you need to do is think, how can I connect this story in a meaningful way to this ad I'm running, to this presentation I'm doing, to whatever it might be, that you can use that story to then bridge to something meaningful that you want to share with people. Now, of course, if you want to learn how to use the power of storytelling in Facebook ads, I do have an additional resource for you that you can find. tomearl.me/ads is where you'll find it. You can use that to go a little bit deeper. I can show you the step-by-step strategy that we use to really use the power of storytelling in Facebook ads. But whether you use it for ads or for whatever it is that you're doing, even if it's just to form deeper connections with those you care about, I recommend starting to journal and to think about how can you use the power of storytelling to build that deeper connections. I look forward to any questions y'all have or any reflections you have on this. And once again, tomearl.me/ads is where you can get more resources for this. My friends, I appreciate you spending this time with me here today. I am grateful for you. And as always, I'm wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you.